Djuro, thank you so much for your time. What's your take on cyber attacks? Were you surprised that this happened?
Gabriella, good morning to you, and I'm not surprised because it's been happening for a long time. And although I disagree, I don't think this is entirely that sophisticated, but it has been sustained. Clearly, the Prime Minister, and I actually applaud the Prime Minister and the government for coming out strong about cyber attacks, because cybersecurity and our online security has been a big thing for me, and I've pushed it on this segment many times about being safe online. But I do believe that it's the sustained amount of attacks on organisations that the government says, well, okay, it's enough. Maybe our organisations, our institutions, particularly at certain levels, haven't got their security in order. And it's not just at the top with the technical stuff, it's also personnel, because a lot of these things rely on, as I said, not sophisticated at all, just spear phishing attacks, which means that they send an email to someone who may be lower down in the office qualifications, and then they end up clicking on a link and infecting the whole system. Sometimes that becomes known, other times no one knows until it's too late. Okay. So there are a number of really unsophisticated ways of getting into systems. So it's going to be something that we have to work on, but I believe that this was a good thing to highlight from the government.
Wow, okay. So what can Australians do to prevent these attacks? Like, what can the government be doing to make sure this doesn't happen again?
That's a really good question, Gabriella, and it really starts with us as workers, that we need to be really suspicious about every email you get. I mean, I'm always suspicious about an email from Timmy Gilbert because I don't even know how he uses a computer, so I've got to be suspicious about that. But what you've got to be doing is saying, okay, do I click on this link? And you shouldn't click on a link ever from an email unless you're absolutely sure that you spoke to someone 2 seconds ago on the phone and they sent you a link straight away. Okay. Because that's how they get you. And you know, I've been doing these stories for 5 years, and although people have got the message, it's like until it happens to them, Gabriella, they will not change their attitudes. A few weeks ago, we talked about passwords. Everyone's still using bad passwords. I hope your password technique is up to standard, Gabriella, but that is one of the big things we have to do. Clean up your passwords, be less trustworthy of emails, and don't click on links that you don't really know.
How has COVID-19 played a part in this? Since lockdown, more people have been working from home. Has that been a security issue?
I reckon it's a nightmare for people working at home, for the IT managers in Australia, because they're outside the firewall environment and haven't really had time to build up personal computers to log in to systems at work. So you have to be really careful if you're a system administrator that people logging in to your work system are doing it the right way, aren't getting man-in-the-middle attacks where people can see your traffic because of something you've done in your home network. We just don't know. So I think that has been a big issue for Australians to deal with. Once again, we as workers and consumers have to take some responsibility.
The government says a state-based actor is responsible for this attack, and most people are assuming that it's China. How concerning is that?
Yeah, it really is, because essentially what we deal with, I've been into the Semantic and the Norton antivirus people's war rooms before, and they have these great maps about showing where all the traffic comes from, and they can tell when there's a big attack going on because of the amount of traffic. And Australia is a really sweet target because we're very trusting and have a better quality of life and a higher income generally over here, and we intend to pay for ransomware. So that sort of idea about how do we combat against criminals is one thing, but if it's a state-based attack trying to look like criminals, that's another thing as well. But I think everyone's probably doing this around the world to each other, so I think everyone gets those indicators if states are doing it. But once again, I'll go back. I think it's a really good thing that Prime Minister Morrison has put this on the table, because it's put every country on alert. If you're up to something, then we know about it.
What are your thoughts on virtual private networks, also known as VPNs? Should we be using them?
Absolutely, and I'm so glad you asked that question, Gabriella, because virtual private networks have been around for a long time, and many businesses have them, but I think for a person who travels a bit, as we get back on the road, or even around as we get back in the cafes and stuff like that, using public Wi-Fi, it is essential to look at getting a VPN. Now, what my advice is to people is there are a lot of VPN ads going on out there, and they're not just about watching movies from a different region, which because they mask your IP address. There are legitimate reasons to use it. And one of those is to protect your connection to another person on the internet, because with a VPN, your data stream is completely private. Not even your ISP, your internet service provider, can tell what you're looking at. And if you go to a cafe, you should absolutely be using a VPN. Now, you should also use a paid VPN, because VPNs that do not have a monetary system where you pay for them have to get their money somewhere else. So you don't know what they're advertising. So you need to go to a trusted service. If you want, for example, I use ExpressVPN. A great service. There is a monthly fee, about $10 or something like that. But if it's a work thing, you certainly can write it off. Right. But I absolutely suggest that a VPN is a way to go. It gives you great protection, not just on your laptop, but on your phones as well. So my advice is to look at getting a VPN, particularly if you're doing a lot of browsing at cafes and things like that.
Great, thank you. Image Matrix Text editor Djuro Sen, thank you so much for joining us on Weekend Edition this morning.